Let's start with a simple but uncomfortable fact. Black Americans are roughly 14% of the U.S. population, but account for less than 3% of employer-owned businesses. That gap has persisted for generations. Now, that is usually explained as racism, and that's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because there is another factor, an internal one. Black America possessed one of the most powerful economic resources in modern history. It's music. An industry beneath their feet, the mismanagement and exploitation of black music, the 5 missed opportunities of black music. Hi, I'm Norman Kelly. And yet, this resource was never organized into a durable, scalable, black-controlled industry. This is not just a story of exclusion. It is a story of missed opportunity. It is also a story of class. The problem is not that black enterprise never existed. It did, repeatedly. The problem is that it rarely matured into institutions. And that failure comes in 2 forces. External, white control of capital, markets, and distribution. Internal, black leadership's ambivalence or hostility towards black popular music. The second point is where the story begins. Because if music had been treated not just as culture, but as industry, the trajectory of black economic development might look very different today. Take the Fisk Jubilee Singers, an ensemble of former enslaved people that began at Fisk University in the 1870s. They were not just performers. They were, in effect, the first post-emancipation black commercial music act. They took spirituals born out of slavery and brought it to the market. And where did they go with it? They used it to fund schools, institutions, infrastructure. That is the key point. Music was already demonstrating its capacity to generate capital, but no one scaled it. No one institutionalized it. It remained episodic, not structural. Black leadership saw the evidence, but did not act on it. Figures like Booker T. Washington used music fitfully for fundraising, but they never pursued it as a primary economic platform. Why? Because of what Carter G. Woodson called this miseducation. When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. Black leadership was trained to see legitimacy through professionalism, moral respectability, alignment with white norms. Music did not fit that framework, so it was dismissed or tolerated, but never built into an industry. There is another factor, class. The black elite, what we would call the bourgeoisie, often held working class black culture in contempt. A my race, but not my taste attitude. And yet, that same working class produced spirituals, folk songs, blues, jazz, R&B, ragtime, rock and roll, soul, hip hop. In other words, the masses created the value. The elite failed to organize it. That is the contradiction. Black music has always had enormous soft power. It shapes taste, language, culture, global identity. But soft power is not enough, because without ownership, the hard power, you don't control production, distribution, monetization. So what happens? Your creativity becomes a resource for someone else's industry, which is exactly what happened. Music may be one of the very few cultural continuities from Africa that survived slavery, a form of inherited wealth which created a rhythm nation. but it was treated as morally suspect, politically unserious, economically marginal. Instead of being organized, it was extracted, commercialized, controlled by others, with one major exception, Motown. And even that came late and did not fully resolve the structural problem. The result is predictable. Value is created, but not retained because it is not understood as intellectual property that becomes an intellectual asset owned by others. Each generation starts over. There is no accumulation, no institutional continuity, no compounding. Symbolic victories replace balance sheets. That is not cultural failure. It is strategic failure. The pattern repeats across leadership. Different ideologies, same outcome. In this podcast, we're going to examine 5 figures: Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, James Weldon Johnson, Marcus Garvey, Nannie Helen Burroughs. They disagree on a number of things, but they share one blind spot. None fully recognized or institutionalized the economic power of black music. So the question becomes, if black leadership was committed to economic self-sufficiency, why did they ignore the one sector where black people already dominated? We start with the most powerful black leader of his time, Booker T. Washington, and ask a simple question. What would have happened if he had also built a school, not of the 19th century individual proprietorship, but of music based on industrial ambition? Booker T. Washington was the most powerful black leader in America for nearly 20 years, more powerful in his time than anyone who came after him. He could shape policy, he could influence donors, he could shut down rivals. And he's built his leadership around 2 central ideas: industrial education and economic development. But here's the problem. He misunderstood where black economic power actually lived. In 1895, Booker T. Washington delivered what became known as the Atlantic Compromise speech. Quote, "In all things purely social, we can be as separate as the 5 fingers, yet as one hand in all things essential to mutual progress." Unquote. That line made him the dominant black leader of his era. But it was not just rhetoric, it was a program. Washington argued, do not agitate for civil rights, do not demand social equality. Focus the stand on economic contribution. If black people prove their value in the marketplace, recognition would follow. Washington distilled his philosophy into a simple formula: brains, property, character. Build economic strength. Demonstrate usefulness. Earn your place. And more importantly, he emphasized production. Those who produce control. That insight is not wrong, but here is where the failure begins. Washington's method was industrial education. Train black workers to build, manufacture, serve. In effect, prepare blacks to participate in the emerging Southern economy. However, this economy built on a 19th century idea of individual entrepreneurship while ignoring mass production, industrial integration, financial combination, monopolization, but not control it. Industrial education trained black labor. It did not build black industry. It created skilled participants, not owners of systems. Now here is the critical point. Washington had another principle. Create a niche. Become indispensable. Do something better than anyone else. That is the core of competitive advantage. And if you apply that logic, there is one obvious domain: black music. It already existed. However, the supreme irony was that Washington, as the patron saint of black capitalism, based on his policies of peasant conservatism, did not see black music as a business opportunity. For example, what if he had created a school of race music and used that music as means to teach a skill or trade based on his principles of industrial education? An even greater irony was that the Negro leader, who had the ears of whites, he could get things done, as evidenced by him partnering with Julius Roosevelt to create over 5,000 Roosevelt schools in the South. These 5,000 plus Roosevelt schools spread throughout the South could have been the seabeds of transforming precarious Southern musicians into artisans of sound. However, an even greater missed opportunity was Washington's inability to see black music as an economic platform. Due to his peasant conservatism, Washington missed an opportunity to devise programs based on industrial education to create a Negro entertainment sector based on black talent. Had he possessed industrial ambition along with a scalable plan, he might have been able to approach the same social and capital network that he used to secure philanthropic funding for the Tuskegee Institute. Coupled with Washington's policies of peasant conservatism, along with the code of Victorian respectability politics, black popular music, which was formed in the South, lacked a vision of industrial ambition, despite being the seabed of American popular music in general. W.E.B. Du Bois and the second missed opportunity. W.E.B. Du Bois saw more clearly than anyone else of his generation. He understood race, power, history, structure. He gave us one of the most enduring concepts in American thought: double consciousness. The sense of always seeing oneself through the eyes of others. If anyone should have understood the political economy of black music, it was Du Bois, and yet he represents the second missed opportunity. If Booker T. Washington represents economic pragmatism, Du Bois represents intellectual and cultural leadership. He believed in higher education, cultivated elites, what he called the talented tenth. The idea was simple. Culture and leadership flowed from the top down. Du Bois said it directly. No nation rises from the bottom. It rises from the top. That belief shaped everything that followed. Unlike Washington, Du Bois actually recognized the potential for entertainment. In The Negro in Business, 1899, he wrote, "There was a large, undeveloped field in entertainment, a chance for education, uplift, investment, even profit." He even framed it in economic terms, a field that could yield returns. So the question becomes, if Du Bois saw it, why didn't he build it? The answer becomes clear with Black Swan Records, one of the first black-owned record companies. Du Bois invested in it, the company failed. But here's the critical issue. He never publicly analyzed that failure. He did not break down what went wrong, extract lessons, provide guidance for future entrepreneurs. Instead, the failure disappeared to silence. That matters. Because if failure is not analyzed, it cannot become knowledge. And without knowledge, there is no institutional learning. Du Bois had another limitation: class. He was, by his own admission, an elitist, the founder of the Talented Tenth. He valued classical music, European culture, refined aesthetics. He did not take seriously ragtime blues, emerging popular forms, which were being created by the black working class. So you get a contradiction. The masses created the value. The elite did not recognize it. Thus, a segment of the black elite, the economic sector that comprises the black bourgeoisie, stymied its own development as a leadership class, but not being able to exploit its own folk culture as an economic source. Here is where the failure becomes more striking. Du Bois was a master of empirical analysis. The Philadelphia Negro, sociological data, charts, statistics, studies. He could analyze systems, but he never applied that analytical rigor to the emerging music industry. No feasibility study, no industry mapping, no strategic blueprint. Even though he understood a small sector is strategically positioned could exert enormous power. He himself said it, but he did not operationalize it. Now consider the counterfactual. If you combine Washington's focus on economic development with Du Bois' analytic capacity, you could have had a blueprint for a black-controlled music industry under segregation. Indeed, you get separation. Washington's economic agenda, but wrong sector. Du Bois, however, correct insight, but no execution. The gap is the missed opportunity. If you have seen the film Sinners, you will recall these two guys, Smoke and Stack. These men, as entrepreneurs, had the right idea. They understood the political economy of black music. While this leadership gap persisted, the industry did not wait. White-owned firms organized, capitalized, distributed black music. So once again, black creativity becomes raw material. Others built the industry. So now we have two patterns. Washington's limited economic vision without industrial ambition. Du Bois' analytic capability blinded by elitist pretense. Next we turn to James Weldon Johnson, someone who understood the entertainment world itself. A man who understood show business firsthand and still did not build an industry. James Weldon Johnson and the third missed opportunity. James Weldon Johnson knew the music business from the inside, not as an observer, as a participant. He was a songwriter, a lyricist, part of a successful show business team, a diplomat, and later the first black executive secretary of the NAACP. If Du Bois represents theory, Johnson represents experience, and yet he too represents a missed opportunity. Before Harlem, before the Renaissance, Johnson, his brother, and Bob Cole were already producing hits. Songs like Under the Bamboo Tree circulated widely in American culture, so widely that audiences often did not even realize that the creators were black. That tells you something important. Black creativity was already embedded in American popular culture. But embedded does not mean owned. Johnson encountered the reality of the industry directly. When he and his collaborators approached publishers, they were warned. Tin Pan Alley operated on appropriation. At one meeting, a white publisher casually joked about, quote-unquote, stealing some Negro stuff from them. That was not an exception. That was the system. So Johnson understood something firsthand. Black music was valuable, but unprotected. Johnson, however, was not naive. At a National Negro Business League conference in 1904, he submitted a paper, Music Composition as a Business. This is a critical moment because it shows he understood that music was not just an art, it was commerce, publishing, rights, revenue. He saw it, but here's the failure. That insight did not become a program. That program failure could be attributed to the National Negro Business League, which was supposed to organize black enterprise, but did not treat entertainment as an industry. Its focus remained on business, insurance, real estate, small manufacturing, agriculture. All respectable, all aligned with middle-class norms, but none aligned with where black people were generating mass value. So even when Johnson inside the room, entertainment was not institutionalized as a business sector. Later, as the leader of the NAACP, Johnson identified a major problem: money. He proposed raising funds for books, publication, films, international messaging, a communication strategy. But again, music is absent, or at best implied, never central. Johnson's analysis points to a lack of resources, but that's only part of the story, because at the same time, black music was already generating enormous economic value. The value was flowing not into black institutions, but into white-owned companies, publishers, record labels, distributors. So the issue is not simply lack of capital, it is lack of strategic vision about where capital could be generated. By the 1920s and 30s, recording expands, radio emerges, film becomes dominant, mass cultural communication becomes industrialized. But black leadership, including Johnson, did not establish a foothold in radio, recording, film infrastructure. So once again, the industry forms, but others control it. Washington missed the sector. Du Bois saw it, but didn't build it. Johnson was inside it, and still did not translate experience into institution. This is the distinction. Knowledge without organization is not power. So now the pattern deepens. Washington has economic vision, but no industrial ambition. Du Bois, analysis, but elitist orientation. Johnson, experience, no institutionalization of knowledge. Next, we turn to Marcus Garvey, the one leader who actually built a mass organization. What happens when mass mobilization meets cultural power, but still fails to build an industry? Marcus Garvey, and the fourth missed opportunity. Marcus Garvey did what no other black leader of his era accomplished. He built a mass movement, not a theory, not a program, a movement. Hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people organized, mobilized, disciplined, and yet, even with that level of power, he failed to build a durable economic system. Garvey understood something fundamental. The South was the character-making center of Black America. This is where Black culture was formed under pressure, and more importantly, it was the source of Black music. Spiritual, folk song, blues, ragtime, jazz, gospel, and music perhaps was the only thing which survived the transatlantic slave trade. The South was not just a site of oppression, it was a site of production, cultural production, economic potential. Garvey built the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNAI. What matters is not just its size, but its structure. Local divisions across the country, especially in the South. Each division represented a community, a network, a base of people. This is something none of the previous leaders had. Washington had influence. Du Bois had analysis. Johnson had experience. Garvey had organization at a scale. And what did he do with that organization? He built the Black Star Line, a shipping company, selling stock to black people. It failed. Garvey was prosecuted, imprisoned, and deported. Now the failure is usually framed as government repression, financial mismanagement. That's not wrong, but it misses the deeper issue. It was the wrong industry. Look at what Garvey actually had. Thousands of local chapters, churches, families, young people, built-in audiences. This is not just a movement. This is a distribution network. Now ask the question, what if Instead of a shipping line, Garvey had built a music infrastructure. Recall the number of Rosenwald schools and layer them over the UNIA's division in the South. A potential infrastructure ready for something unique, music-based political organization. Imagine this. Every UNIA division becomes a band, a choir, a performance unit. Music becomes recruitment, cohesion, revenue. Garvey already understood the spectacle, uniforms, parades, pageantry. He functioned like a band leader of a movement. The missing step was obvious. Turn that cultural energy into economic structure. Because at the same time, something else was already happening. The Chitlin Circuit, a network of venues across the South, clubs, theaters, social spaces, where black musicians performed and where money was circulated. Not in large sums, but in accumulation. Nickels and dimes multiplied across venues and nights. This is a business model. Decentralized, repeatable, scalable. Garvey had people, structure, ideology, discipline. What he lacked was alignment between his organization and the economic engine already emerging among his people. Instead of building from culture, talent, existing demand, he pursued a capital-intensive industry outside his base. This is the most consequential missed opportunity so far because Garvey comes closer. He had the raw ingredients of a music-based political economy and still did not assemble them. He could have created the United Music Improvement Association, planting hundreds of Jubilee music schools throughout the South. So now the pattern reaches its peak. Washington, misdirected economics. Du Bois, analysis without execution. Johnson, experience without institution. Garvey, mass organization without economic alignment. Next, we move to someone who stood at the intersection of developing a school for working class women, but ignored the potential of popular culture. Nannie Helen Burroughs. What happens when working class institutions ignore the political economy of black music? Nannie Helen Burroughs and the fifth missed opportunity. Mamie Smith was Race Records' first $1 million star, whose Crazy Blues sold over 1 million records in 1920. While she herself began her career in vaudeville, some of the greatest voices in American music started as domestic workers. Before the stage, before recording, before fame, they cleaned houses, they cooked meals, they labored in the lowest paid sector available to black women. Ella Fitzgerald, Dinah Washington, Mahalia Jackson, Billie Holiday. This is not incidental. This is a structure. And no one was closer to that reality than Nannie Helen Burroughs. In 1909, Burroughs founded the National Training School for Women and Girls in Washington, D.C. Its purpose, uplift, discipline, economic self-sufficiency, and its method, training black women in domestic science. In other words, professionalizing domestic labor, turning survival work into structured employment. Now, here is the detail that changes everything at Burroughs School. The most popular subject was music, not domestic science, not clerical work, music. That tells you something fundamental. The labor base already knew where the opportunity was. The students saw it. They were already moving toward it. Burroughs has students, structure, curriculum, institutional authority. She could have trained singers professionally, taught contracts, explained publishing, developed business literacy around music. In other words, she could have transformed talent into a profession, into an industry. Instead, that conversion never happened. Why? because of ideology. Burroughs operated within Victorian morality, religious discipline, respectability politics. She viewed popular culture, especially working class entertainment, as vulgar, unrefined, morally suspect. She criticized forms of black expression as loud, crude, and lacking refinement. That attitude is not unique to her. It is part of a broader pattern among black leadership. Burroughs actually saw the contradiction. She noted white Americans were profiting from black expressive culture, turning it into stage performance and income. She understood black cultural production had economic value, but she applied that insight to humor, not music, and even then she did not build the institutional response. What makes this missed opportunity distinct is her position. Burroughs worked directly with working class black women, the very population producing musical talent. She was not removed from the source. She was embedded in it, which means she had access to the labor force of a potential industry. That is something none of the previous leaders had. Imagine a different model, a school that trained black women to be performers, composers, entrepreneurs, with knowledge of contracts, royalty, publishing, touring circuits. You would have had a professional class of black female musicians organized from the ground up. Instead, the industry developed without them, or rather around them. Now the pattern is complete. Washington ignored the sector. Du Bois saw it, but did not build it. Johnson worked in it, did not institutionalize it. Garvey had mass structure, but misaligned it. Burroughs had the labor base, but did not convert it. Each failure is different, but the outcome is the same. Black music generates value. Others build the institutions. At this point, the question changes. It is no longer, why was black music exploited? It is, why was it never organized into power? Because across leadership, there was no alignment, no institutional vision, no sustained effort to convert culture into capital. Cruz's insight regarding the mass cultural communication industry. Mass cultural communication is a basic industry, as basic as oil, steel, and transportation in its own way. Developing along with it, supporting it, subservient to it, is an organized network of functions that are creative, administrative, propagandistic, educational, recreational, economic, and cultural. Taken as a whole, this enterprise involves what C. Wright Mills called the cultural apparatus. Only the blind cannot see whoever controls the cultural apparatus, whatever class, power group, faction, or political faction, also controls the destiny of the United States and everything in it. Black music is a core component of the mass cultural communication industry. Had race leaders embraced black popular music as a potential economic source, as a form of cultural capital, they could have created what Neil Gabler once wrote of American Jews in Hollywood, an empire of their own.